Hi, my name is Becca Rice. Some of the most complex decisions that I've had to make in my life are those related to hiring, firing, and disciplining staff. I'm the manager at my place of work, um, and I've been there about 5 years, and I'm responsible for all of these things. One of the examples that comes to mind for me that is relating to this hard decision that I had to make is the most recent instance that I had to fire a staff member, which was about 2 months ago. We'll call him Joe for the purpose of this assignment. I hired Joe close to a year before I had let him go, and he honestly is one of my favorite people that I have worked with. He meshed well with other staff members, became close friends with them, even hanging out outside of work, dating one of the staff members as well. He was very funny and involved, and I enjoyed having him around for sure. Unfortunately, though, he had some intolerable tendencies. These include profanity usage on the floor. Excuse me. He was one of my shift leads, and just poor leadership in that position, like letting our other staff members slack when I wasn't there, refusing to work with urgency, um, which is a big important thing for us in our store. Kind of like a pillar of our business, honestly. Oversleeping for his shifts, most prevalently calling out several times per month, without trying to get his shift covered either, along with just poor communication with me. All good reasons to, let somebody go. Let's see. My selfish reason for keeping him around for longer than I probably should have was that he worked every weekend. And in my position, one of my benefits is that if I'm able to make the schedule work and I'm not called in because somebody called out, I have every weekend off. And so one of my selfish reasons for keeping him around for probably longer than I should have was that because he worked every weekend, it allowed me to work less of them. The problem is that I would have to work them anyways because he called out so frequently, leaving the rest of us high and dry. Either leaving me high and dry because I didn't actually get to have I already work full time, so having to work those days in addition and not having a day off kind of leaves me high and dry, or if I don't go in, that leaves them short staffed at the store. He called out once simply because he had homework and didn't accomplish it during his off time, and I should have let him go then. Another thing is that at the time we were already short staffed, so it was a much needed decision that was charged with emotion since we liked him so much and we're already stressed with work levels. But I decided it was the right thing to do, and it did upset some people, but I tried to sit on this decision for a few hours before fully settling on it or letting him know. I expressed our need for reliable staff in a work environment that is so heavily team oriented, and that I did not believe he was being reliable, and that I would no longer accept taking advantage of my leniency. Second question I wanted to address was the 4 villains to healthy decision making. I wasn't quite sure if the question was asking what are the 4 villains, or which one affects me most. So I figured I'd just answer both. One, the four villains to healthy decision making, as we learned in Decisive by Heath, are one, narrow framing, which is thinking in binary terms that entail or options rather than and options. Two, confirmation bias, which is when we have already have a preconceived belief that is distortedly supported because of our desire to be correct. Three, short-term emotion, which is making decisions in the heat of a moment, whether that be sadness, anger, excitement, etc. Four, overconfidence, which is similar to confirmation bias. Overconfidence rules out any other decisions and overlooks other information. Because of the confidence we might have in a moment or the lack of thinking about future outcomes. I would say that short-term emotion is the villain that I fight the most in my life because I'm a pretty anxious person, so I tend to assume the worst and then make decisions based off of it. In this scenario of letting Joe go, I would say that I fought this villain too, mostly out of frustration and desire to have my scheduled off day. But looking back on it, I wish I would have planned better either prior to this call out to letting him go, or do so after finding a replacement. But I let him go rather quickly out of emotion. Among some of the things I learned from these last few weeks in the course, to answer question 3, the first would be from Kahneman, I think is how we pronounce it. In addition to the 2 decision-making systems that he taught us about, one slow and one quicker paced, I think I most benefited from his advice to delay decision-making as long as possible. As someone who naturally leans toward the slower system, but is forced to use the quicker one a lot in my daily actions or my daily decisions, it was validating to hear him speak on the benefit to taking your time and delaying decisions to get the most information possible. Secondly, I really enjoyed chapter 9 of our text on honoring your core priorities. This section was interesting to me because, as Professor Onks had pointed out, we do indeed know on the surface that we have values, but to slow down and recognize which ones are really important to us and seeing how they impact our decision making was really insightful for me. One thing I learned about myself in this section was that freedom is highly important to me, but I wouldn't have said that before, at least before having an in-depth conversations about what that truly means. Another thing that I feel like I learned in this course is that overconfidence can also be one of the villains that I fight, at least in my work. Because I am manager, I make a lot of executive decisions, and sometimes I can be a little bit overconfident that I'm making the right one, or just making them too quickly, I guess, with not having a lot of information. That's another thing that I've learned about myself in this course. I thought that the emotional questions that the text suggested in chapter 9 were also very helpful to me in learning to digest before making better decisions that align with my values. And then Ariely, I think is how we pronounce it, taught me that fear of loss is a major emotional construct that obstructs our ability to make healthy decisions, and that when we are fearful of losing options, we tend to nurture that disappearing option, which we don't truly care about, at the expense of the options that do mean a lot to us. But overall, this course has taught me a lot about the values I have, and the way I operate in my decision making and how to do so more healthily. Thanks.